Hey, welcome to Soul Hub. So, in today's episode, we're going to be discussing something that I think is a big issue that a lot of people, if not the majority of people on the spiritual path, face. And it's actually encapsulated and eloquently described in this question sent by Ian. And I'm just going to read the question and you'll see if you can relate to this and if you go through the same type of thing. So Ian says, I'm really good at walking meditation such that I have almost no mind and the world I see is in my heart, and I can literally feel my heart swelling. I have an amazing joy for life during that period and a gratitude that brings me to my knees and a love for all. I sometimes cannot walk because of the feeling of love. But then I get home, open the door, and scream at the kids for fighting with one another, moan at the wife for something irrelevant, and drop into a bad mood, all in a space of seconds. I then become aware and turn attention on myself and work really hard to not let others bother me so much. Do you have advice on how not to react so quickly to abrupt changes in the environment? So this is a wonderful question from Ian. I think a lot of people can relate to it. I know I can, and I'll get into a little bit about that later. But it's not just about, being really good at walking meditation or something like in specific to Ian. It could be anything. It could be that when you are, in your room with eyes closed, alone, meditating, you can feel peace. Even if you don't quiet your mind completely, even if it's nothing ecstatic, you just feel peaceful, you feel calm. And then the moment you're back in the outside world with your family or, at work or wherever it may be in specific to your situation, you just get triggered so easily. And it's as if, like, what was the point of all that meditation? What the hell was I doing in there, right? It's like, I can feel like that in 1 second. And then literally a few seconds later, I'm back to just seemingly my default self. So then the mind starts asking, what's even the point of meditating? Are you even progressing? Why does this continue happening? And why the disconnect? And so I'd like to start with the big picture, because I think to address this issue, it really needs a big picture shift in perspective first. And then we can get into a little more of the kind of the details and the nuances of how to go about it. But the big picture shift can radically change things for you. All right. And so what's the big picture shift? Right now, what's happening with Ian and with others who are facing such issues is that the spiritual life, the meditation, whatever it is being separated from life, from the rest of your life. So you got your spiritual life in one corner and you got the rest of your life somewhere else. And when you're meditating, great, you can be all spiritual, but then the rest of your life, you kind of lose that connection. And so, I speak from a lot of personal experience dealing with this issue. And kind of being able to get into very transcendent states while meditating, and then feeling a disconnect at times, not always. Sometimes there's flow, but I've gone through many periods of feeling a disconnect when the rest of life happens. And the one thing that has always really helped me, and right now, currently, my intention is to really get back into that at a deeper level than ever before, because it's always been so beautiful. And the only thing that really stops it from continuing is resistance that comes up. And then, you fall into that cycle of, oh, something went wrong. Oh, I'm regressing. I addressed that in a previous episode, that's not actually regression. I understand that at a much deeper level now. And so the idea is to, once you have the proper framework that you're not regressing when seemingly you fall back a couple steps, that it's really just part of the path, it can help you stick to this shift in perspective that I'm about to tell you about. And so what is this shift in perspective? Well, the shift is to really find a way to make your life not only part of your spiritual path, but the very essence of your spiritual path, versus spirituality being just times when you meditate and so forth. Now, how do you do that? Well, a wonderful way that I've discovered is by looking at the perspective of a soul with a curriculum. All right. And so there are various levels of consciousness. On the highest level, which I talk about regularly, you're already fully complete. You're an infinite being. You're not even an individual soul. You are the totality itself, because if you're infinite awareness with no boundaries, well, where do you end? Where does another soul begin? You're really merged as a oneness. So that's the highest, kind of deepest level. But then, one level, quote unquote, below that, there's no really below or above. It's all happening at the same time, but just so you can visualize it in terms of the ultimate and kind of the more dense levels. So one level below that is the soul level, where you're seemingly an individual soul, a unique individual soul, and you came to this earth for a reason, right? And on this level, you're seemingly not complete yet. You're seemingly evolving, and through endless time, in essence, evolving, getting to higher and higher levels of consciousness. On the ultimate level, there's no evolution because there's no space, there's no time. You're already the perfect wholeness that you've always been. But as that oneness that you are, look at it this way. And some people might ask, well, why, how could there be different levels of, or if you're already complete, how could there also be evolution? So let me explain it this way. If you are this, let's say you are the oneness. Well, a oneness, by definition, can't experience itself. So for instance, as an example, to make it easier for you to understand that, think about your eye. The eye can't see itself, right? The eye needs a mirror to see itself, but it can't see itself. Why? Because it is one whole unto itself. So it can't see itself directly. It needs some kind of aid to see and experience itself as what it looks like. And so think of creation or the manifest universe as that. The oneness can't experience itself in the absolute form. So it creates a multitude of forms, an infinite number of souls who then incarnate into an infinite number of bodies and so forth, forgetting temporarily that they are that oneness. It's like the oneness is playing hide and seek with itself. Why? To then rediscover itself through these seemingly individual beings and bodies and so forth, and reawaken to its divine nature as the one. And in this way, it gets to experience itself. So it creates a duality where there really isn't one, because it's only just one. So it creates a duality for the purpose of experiencing. And the duality is, in essence, an illusion. That's why, in truth, we're all one. It's just like a play of consciousness or a dream of consciousness, so it can experience itself. That's a very helpful way to look at it. All right? And so, speaking of that level, one down, where you're an individual soul seemingly, then that soul is evolving and becoming more and more whole and more complete, back to merge back as the one that is already complete. So that's kind of the play of it. And so as that soul, you come to a place like Earth to learn, to grow, to expand your consciousness so that you can keep growing into higher states of consciousness and moving forward and experiencing growth. All right? And Earth, there's very few places like Earth, I think, to get an education for a soul. I've heard some people say or question, like, must we be less evolved souls if we're on Earth? Now, I think there's all sorts of levels of evolution of souls on Earth, but I think if you're on Earth, you've chosen a really hard class. You're not in kindergarten, you're not in elementary school, you're in a graduate class. Right? You're in that one class where most students don't want to even approach it because the teacher is a bit tough, and it's one of those classes where it's really hard to get good grades. But if you graduate it, it's an incredible achievement. And the beautiful thing I think about Earth is that there's so many challenges, and there's such a heavy density of the emotional body and the mental body and so forth, that it can really cause a leap in the evolution of the consciousness of the soul if they really learn the lessons well. And so it's kind of like this accelerator course, if you will. All right. And so if you look at it that way, then you can start approaching every day as your curriculum as part of the larger class called life. So the soul chooses a certain body, mind with a certain personality and certain gifts, but also certain challenges that it knows it needs to expand its consciousness. Now, on this level, we can really get into victim mindset and like, why did this bad thing happen to me? Why do I have this character trait that I don't like? Why did I not succeed at this? And so on and so on. Why do I have these certain family members? Blah, 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 right? But on a higher level, you chose exactly these things because that's exactly what your consciousness needed. In fact, I would venture to say that there is nothing you can experience on this level that is not exactly what you need. Exactly what you need. It may not be what your mind or the ego wants, but it's exactly what the soul needs to expand its consciousness. Now, why? Well, think of a simple analogy. Think of the analogy of going to the gym. You can't grow your muscles without putting them through discomfort, without challenging them. If you're just always comfortable, they won't grow, right? It's at that point beyond the comfort zone where there's a little bit of pain and challenge that where they grow. Well, it's the exact same way with consciousness. So we need the tests of life, because we can sit here and be all spiritual as much as we like in our room, closed eyes, closed doors, no one bothering us, right? But then what happens when you go and you hit a traffic jam and you're late for work? What happens when someone cuts you off? What happens when someone says something not kind to you? Right? It really takes a whole different level of consciousness to then apply it to life. So I would say that the true mark of spiritual progress is not how long you can stay in meditation. It's how are you becoming in your everyday life? Are you changing as a person? Are you becoming more responsive and less reactive? And I'm not talking about perfection by any means. Trust me, I am nowhere near perfect, right? Not even close. But I have seen a very remarkable change in the way I deal with things over the last few years. Whereas previously, there used to be a lot of anger, even some rage. There was, periods of negativity that I would slip into and so forth. Whereas now, it takes a lot more to trigger me, essentially. And even if or when I do get triggered, I can get back to balance very quickly compared to what it used to be before, right? That's the mark of true change. And so the idea is, if you look at every single day as a curriculum, as your classroom, then here's the remarkable shift that occurs. What happens is, if you actually want to grow, right? If you actually want to be a good student, you want to learn, you want to grow, you start having gratitude for the challenges that come up during your everyday life. Whereas right now you might be looking at your spiritual life in one place and the rest of your life in another, and the rest of your life almost is like a nuisance. Like Ian says, then my kids do this and when my wife does that. And it's kind of seen as like, a disruption to your peaceful state of mind. And the ego doesn't want to be disrupted. It wants to stay high, It wants to stay in that high place of love and joy. And this is seen as negative. Whereas what if you took the perspective of, it's not about just being in an elevated state for periods of meditation and then coming back down. What about the perspective of, it's about the long-term, true, deeper change, not the experience of certain transcendent moments, because those can be addictive, but they don't necessarily lead to the deepest change, right? The deepest change is where the rubber meets the road. It's where it's actually applied in your life and it becomes embodied. Because think about it, what the hell's the point of all that spirituality if you're not embodying it in your everyday life? It becomes more of it can become more of a selfish pursuit. Like, I just want to feel really good. I just want to feel, love and happiness. But then the rest of the world, it doesn't pour out of you to the rest of the world. And so it becomes just about me. And that's your clue that there's a hidden trap there, that the ego is really claiming those transcended states, really being addicted to them in a way. Because if it wasn't the ego, then there would be an outpouring of that love, and there'd be a genuine desire to bring it into your everyday life, right? And so this is one big trap in spirituality. It's this trap of escapism, of looking at your spiritual life as the escape from your everyday life, where in reality, it's your everyday life that is literally your soul's curriculum and what you came here to learn. So how can you separate those and just try to escape into transcendent states of consciousness? It's really missing the point of it all right? And so what you want to do is start every day. And this is how you apply this radical shift, right? When you wake up in the day, set the firm intention that today is not about getting this done and that done and doing this and doing that. Today is a day for the growth of my soul, for the expansion of my consciousness, and look forward to the curriculum you have for that day. The beautiful thing that starts happening is that you can start even looking forward to challenges like, I wonder who or what is going to challenge me today. I wonder what's going to prove to be the impetus that helps me expand my consciousness. Right? And you can actually genuinely start having gratitude for the harder moments, right? Having gratitude for something that would have previously made you suffer, because suffering is not inherent in what happens. It's not inherent in the situation. It's all about how we interpret it and how we, take that situation and what we do with it in our mind and the narrative that we start telling ourselves. So if we start telling ourselves, oh, this shouldn't be happening to me. Why is this happening? What a nuisance. What a disruption. It's very different from saying, okay, let's see how this can help me grow. Let's see how this can help me become more loving and pour more love onto the world, my family and the world. Let's see how, I'm going to deal with this challenge and how my consciousness is going to expand. And then there's there's a gratitude there. There's I can do this and this is beautiful and thank you for this challenge. And you know what? It's exactly what it needed to be. And you, that person that pissed me off, it's exactly what you needed to do because it helps me see that place in me that is unhealed. So thank you. Now, of course, it's not going to be perfect every time. Sometimes the ego is going to take over. You're going to get triggered and, you're going to react in whatever way and you're going to forget your intention, right? But the idea there is if that happens, you don't then come in and start beating yourself up and say, oh man, you know what? I had that intention. I should be better. But then that's just the ego now being hard on you and not being loving to you. And so you fall into another trap. So the idea is that when you notice you aren't, you use that as the reminder to put you back into that intention. Oh yeah, today is about the curriculum. Today is about the expansion of consciousness and doing things consciously, not about what happens. Because look, you've been doing things like what happens matters so much your whole life. Where has that gotten you? Is there the peace? Is there the happiness? No. So why don't you try focusing on the essence or what the soul's lesson and purpose is? That can be much more helpful. And what also helps, by the way, other than forgiving yourselves any time you trip up, is don't just have it as an intention at the beginning of the day. Continually remind yourself. If you want to start, if it helps, start with hourly reminders literally on your phone. Have an alarm that goes off every hour if you want. Now, eventually move on to just you remembering because that keeps you in a state of higher attention and engagement during the day. But do that, right? And remind yourself, what's the point of this day? If you want, take a little moment to take a conscious breath. Go to the bathroom if you have to. If you have kids, if you're busy at work, whatever. Collect yourself. Recenter. Get back into the intention and go out facing the day as if, it's not just as if, it's the reality, that your spiritual life is whatever is happening in the day. And it's exactly what you need to happen for you. Not to you, for you. That's a remarkable and radical perspective change. It takes things that used to anger you and you can literally have gratitude for them, or at least welcome to the challenge and not fall into victim mindset. And so that's what I recommend for this type of thing. I recommend that you merge your spiritual life with your life, realize that it is the same thing. This is your curriculum. Don't try to escape from life. Embody your spirituality into everyday life, and then see what happens, right? And it'll be an ongoing thing. Sometimes you might feel like you're slipping back. I have kind of periods like that. But as long as the slipping back is not seen as an actual slipping back, it's seen as I've mentioned in previous episode, it's seen as, oh, I've just dug deeper, right? And I've gone deeper. And what happens when you dig deeper? More stuff comes up that was hidden in the subconscious. I've shone more light in, and now some more darkness comes up. All right. And then you deal with that. And even that can be seen as a challenge. Even that could be seen as part of the classroom. It's not just what happens on the outside that's part of your curriculum. It's also what happens on the inside. And so if you start feeling some resistance and some negative stuff come up that in the past you would have let be an excuse to then kind of get into this apathetic or depressed state and not face the day as a curriculum, well, now this is part of your curriculum. You could have gratitude for that too. You can be like, yes, this is coming up. I have more chance to heal, more chance to love this. Just like you can have more chance to love whatever externally seems to be bothering you. They're all indications showing you where you're still stuck, where you're still in ego, and they are beautiful gifts, literally, beautiful gifts coming to you, showing you hidden aspects that need healing. Because without them, those aspects may remain hidden. They can be controlling your life and causing you to make decisions that aren't for your highest good as a soul, that aren't for the highest good of others around you without you realizing it. So thank them for showing you these hidden aspects of yourself. And if you do this, your life will start changing, and you will start changing as a person, and things will become much more enjoyable, because then it won't be about getting disrupted. Everything is your spiritual work. All right? So please try that. And let me know in the comments below if you like this, and later if you think it has helped you. And if you have any questions, again, you can comment below or send them in to support@soulhub.com, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you so much.